Do you enjoy resilient, combat-focused commanders? Do you want to ping your opponents to death with hundreds of triggers? Does the type line Cat Nightmare make you smile? If you answered yes to any of these questions, Trynn and Silvar may be the commanders for you. Let's take a look. Trynn, Champion of Freedom, is 3 and a white for a 3/3 legendary creature, Human Soldier. It has Partner with Silvar, Devourer of the Free. And at the beginning of your end step, if you attack this turn, create a 1/1 human token. Trynn is not very powerful, seemingly, but the thing that she can do is support Silvar, who really is our main commander. Silvar, Devourer of the Free, is 3, a black and a red for a 4/2 legendary cat nightmare. It has Partner with Trynn, Champion of Freedom, Menace, and sacrifice a human to put a +1/+1 counter on Silvar, Devourer of the Free. It gains indestructible until end of turn. The basic play pattern of Trynn and Silvar are to attack with any small creature on turn 4, and then play Trynn. Trynn is going to trigger and give you a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Then, on the following turn, when you cast Silvar, hopefully you can attack with another creature and have Trynn trigger once again. From this point on, you have at least 2 or 3 humans that you can use to keep Silvar safe. You're going to sacrifice a human for 2 reasons. One, to grow Silvar. The second reason you're going to sacrifice a human is for the protection. Whenever there's a board wipe or there's a targeted removal spell pointed at Silvar, you will happily sacrifice a human to make him indestructible until end of turn. Silvar is very potent and often can win games by himself just by getting big enough with Menace to strike for commander damage. In this video, we're going to talk about the 3 major parts of this deck. We are going to talk about the Aristocrats. These creatures will drain your opponent out of the game. Then we'll talk about the sacrifice outlets that will allow us to keep those triggers on the stack. And finally, we will talk about Recursion, ways to get our Aristocrats back from the graveyard so that we can do it over and over again and win the game. First, we're going to talk about the Aristocrats. There are several different types of Aristocrat, but they all do basically the same thing. Let's look at Bastion of Remembrance and Vindictive Vampire for 2 examples. Bastion of Remembrance is a 3-mana enchantment that says when Bastion of Remembrance enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token, and whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Compare that to Vindictive Vampire. It's 3 and a black for a 2/3 vampire, with whenever another creature you control dies, Vindictive Vampire deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. There are many different types of Aristocrats that have basically the same effect, and a little bit of the window dressing is different. Then we have something like Zulaport Cutthroat, which is a 1/1, and it costs 2 mana. And it says whenever Zulaport Cutthroat or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. Something like Cruel Celebrant, since it came out in War of the Spark, it cares about Planeswalkers. Outpost Siege is another enchantment, but if you choose the dragon side of Outpost Siege, it says whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player, so you're able to use the damage on creatures, meaning it's a lot more versatile. And then something like Mayhem Devil is a 3-mana 3/3, and instead of when a creature you control dies, it says whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, Mayhem Devil deals 1 damage to any target. So you have the ping from Outpost Siege, but it's when a player sacrifices a permanent. This deck uses a variety of sacrifice outlets to keep those Aristocrats pinging away at your opponent's life totals, and in some cases creatures. The first sack outlet I want to talk about is Falconwrath Aristocrat. This is 2, a black and a red for a 4/1 flying haste vampire. With text, sacrifice a creature. Falconwrath Aristocrat gains indestructible until end of turn. If the sacrificed creature was a human, put a +1/+1 counter on Falconwrath Aristocrat. Falconwrath Aristocrat is very similar to Silvar. They are both high-power, evasive creatures that are going to try to kill your opponent by sacrificing your other creatures to protect themselves. Silvar can only sacrifice a human, but always gains the +1/+1 counter. Falconwrath Aristocrat can sacrifice any creature and will gain the indestructible, but only gains the +1/+1 counter if the sacrificed creature is a human. In both cases, we would like to be sacrificing humans, like the token that Trynn produces. Next we have Carrion Feeder. This unassuming 1/1 for a single black mana can't block, but you can sacrifice a creature to put a +1/+1 counter on Carrion Feeder. Yahenni Undying Partisan is 2 and a black for a 2/2 legendary Aetherborn vampire. He has haste, and whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Yahenni. Also, you can sacrifice another creature to gain indestructible until end of turn. Ashnod's Altar is an all-star in this kind of deck. 3 mana for an artifact that simply reads, sacrifice a creature, add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. Diabolic Intent is a way to use our creature's deaths for additional gain. We are already pinging and draining, but now we can also be tutoring, because this card allows us to pay 2 mana and sacrifice a creature, which for us isn't much of a downside at all, to search our library for any card. Skullclamp is an absolute all-star in this deck. This 1 mana artifact gives equipped creature +1/-1, and whenever equipped creature dies, draw 2 cards. You're going to move this around from token to token and small creature to small creature, gaining triggers from our Aristocrats, and drawing cards along the way. This may be the most powerful card in the whole deck. Once our creatures have died, one of the key parts of this deck is getting them back so that our Aristocrats can continue to function over and over even after we've sacrificed them. Some cards that are going to allow us to get our creatures back include Alicia, who smiles at death, who can get back 1 creature tapped and attacking every time she attacks. Next we have Claim, which allows us to get a creature that costs 2 or less from our graveyard back to the battlefield. Sevinne's Reclamation is kind of like half of a Sun Titan. It allows you to get a permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less back from your graveyard to the battlefield. We'll use this to get back some of our Aristocrats as well. Command the Dreadhorde allows you to parlay lots of life into many creatures, and because our creatures are so inexpensive, you'll be able to get back many of them with 1 cast. Faith's Reward gives us a chance to get all of our sacrificed creatures back in 1 shot. Garna the Blood Flame allows you to get every creature that died on your board back to your hand if you flash her in. Timing is everything. It doesn't do much if you play it the turn after the board wipe. Immortal Servitude is going to allow you to get back every creature with a single CMC. Usually we're going to pick either 2 or 3 to get back many creatures for not so much mana. Return to the Ranks is similar. We're going to try to get back every one of our 1 and 2 drops in a single shot by convoking our Aristocrats and then sacrificing everything again. And Rally the Ancestors allows us to get back almost every single creature at instant speed. Typically they go away before you can really do much with them, but with all of our sacrifice outlets and Aristocrats, you're going to bring back your entire graveyard. Let's talk for a minute about the difference between token creation and recursion. In this deck, I've been focusing on recursion and bringing our small creatures back from the graveyard after we've sacrificed them. There are definitely some strong token strategies that you could use in this deck. Cards like Call the Coppercoats or Increasing Devotion both provide a huge number of human creature tokens, which are perfect for Silvar, Falconwrath Aristocrats, and generally great to drain our opponents. For this particular deck, I've decided to go the recursion route simply because it's something I haven't done before. Should those cards be in this deck? Absolutely. It's more of a personal choice, and if you're thinking about building a similar deck, I highly recommend them. All of these options are going to allow you to get your creatures back from the graveyard to keep pinging your opponents down. And this is all kind of a backup plan because there will definitely be games where Silvar simply grows so large, you win the game with commander damage, and all of these Aristocrats become kind of just a fun little side effect. Let's look at the deck MVPs. Earlier I said that Skullclamp was one of the strongest cards in this deck, and that's still true. However, we're going to look at 3 cards that are a little bit more unique. Thrilling Encore is definitely a pet card of mine. It says, put onto the battlefield under your control all creature cards in all graveyards that were put there from the battlefield this turn. In this deck, that might just mean sacrificing your entire board of Aristocrats to ping your opponents, and then using Thrilling Encore to get everything back and do it again. Next we have Sir Conrad the Grim, a super Aristocrat. This 5-mana 5/4 says that whenever another creature dies, or a creature is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Sir Conrad deals 1 damage to each opponent. So he's hitting each opponent. He's doing it when your stuff dies, when creatures get milled, when you recur something, when you exile your own graveyard for some reason. He is basically just an Aristocrat that does it all, making him one of the strongest in the deck. Teysa Karlov is a 4-mana 2/4 with, if a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. and creature tokens you control have vigilance and lifelink. As we talked about earlier, this deck doesn't focus on creature tokens very much, so the vigilance and lifelink is more or less flavor text. But doubling all of your triggers that are caused by death means that every sacrifice is going to give you twice the value. Your Skull Clamp now draws you 4 cards. And there you have it, Trynn and Silvar. If you enjoy combat, tokens, sacrifice, death, recursion, check them out. And if you want to see more videos like this one, like and subscribe. I'm Goofyword, and I'll see you next time.